Our next speaker was the first ever African American to serve as a physicist in the United States Air Force. Retiring after a decorated 23-year career at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, I'm so proud and honored to welcome to our stage retired Lieutenant Colonel Ms. J.J. Conway.
Have you ever wondered why there are so few qualified people in technical leadership positions? It's not because they're better than you, they're not. It's not because they're smarter than you, they're not. Now, they might be better looking than you, but that's probably not why. It's because technical leaders tend to make key mistakes that keep them from either being selected for leadership positions, or once they have been selected for leadership positions, cause them to be fired. Today, I'm going to talk about 3 of those critical mistakes and what you can do to overcome them in your leadership journey. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm so passionate about leadership. Imagine, here we are at the Air Force Academy. I'm a young cadet arguing with the advisor as to why I can't declare my major. The chemistry department and the math department welcomed me with open arms. But no offense to any chemists or mathematicians in the room, I found those subjects boring. I thought physics was fun, and it's super cool to levitate magnets. He was exasperated. Why? Why can't I do this? Your grade requirement is 3.0. I had a 3.5. Around and around and around we went until finally he threw up his hands. You can't do it. Blacks can't do physics. You'll never make it. You'll fail. Now, I look like a cream puff, and maybe since retirement I might have eaten a few too many cream puffs. But you're not going to tell me what I can't do. So I decided to declare physics and prove him wrong. Now, we can take a whole nother keynote to talk about spending your life force and energy trying to prove somebody else wrong. And that's what I do with my 6- and 7-figure earners, but that's a whole nother talk, and at 19, I didn't know this. All I knew is I had something to prove. But halfway through my junior year, I was about to give up. I could go to class, go to extra instruction with the teacher, and then I would be more confused after I left his office than when I went in. Finally, after about 2 months of this merry-go-round, on a day when no other physics instructors were in the room, he leveled with me. My job is to get rid of you. And if you will stop coming in here, I will stop feeding you the wrong answers. I stopped going into his office, and a year and a half later, I graduated as president of the physics club. I was the number 5 physics graduate in our class, and it earned me a full ride to get my master's degree in nuclear engineering. And I went on to do physics for 23 years in the United States Air Force. The reason I share those stories with you today is not just to impress upon you how awesome I am, because I am awesome, but also to impress upon you how important it is to be a leader. See, that guy that day, that advisor whose name I don't even remember, whose face I will never forget, he was being a leader, and he was overcoming mistakes that many technical leaders fail to observe. He had to step outside of his comfort zone and do something different than what everyone else wanted to be done. He also had to communicate to me clearly and succinctly about what the issues were and what I needed to do to solve them. And finally, he had learned to allow himself, and many leaders don't allow themselves to build relationships with their subordinates. He had to build a relationship enough with me to care. And so today we're going to talk about these kinds of pitfalls that technical leaders usually make in the context of my military career and the careers of those I've coached. So I want to tell you about this very first branch I had in the United States Air Force. The first research branch, I was so excited. I had a crack team of scientists and engineers. Y'all, I had a budget of $23 million for research. And because of my position, I set direction for $141 million of research throughout 17 different agencies. Oh, I was Lieutenant Colonel Conway. I was large and in charge. And with that great team, I fell flat on my face because I made the first mistake that technical leaders make. And that is I did not get outside of my comfort zone to learn how to lead. Leadership is a skill set that can be learned. But many organizations, especially technical organizations, they hire people because they are good. Well, I found out real quick that being a good physicist did not make me a good leader. And I'm so thankful for prolific writers such as John Maxwell, Malcolm Goldsmith, who wrote books like What Got You Here Won't Get You There, and Talent Is Never Enough. 2 books my mentors put under my face, and when I came back to them and said I read them, said, you didn't read them well enough. Go back and read them again. And with that guidance and understanding what John Maxwell said about leadership being influence, I changed the way I managed that branch. And not only did I change the way I managed that branch, but I then went on to found one of our nation's highest technical committees, the Nuclear Threats Community of Interest. And I, little old me, chaired that community of interest across 17 different agencies in the DC area. So I know the power of getting outside of your comfort zone and learning a new skill set. The next mistake I want to talk to you about today that technical leaders tend to make, we think we want to tell our advances and our value with statistics. And today I'm here to tell you, you've got to learn to tell stories. Sell your advancements and your research with stories, not statistics. Imagine for a second I'm in charge of Air Force Oil Analysis, a program that's near and dear to my heart. It was my very first interagency multidisciplinary job, and I thought I was going to do a great job until I discovered working with interdisciplinary teams. Hold that thought for a second, but let's just say you've already accepted me as being part of that job. I've got a big chart here to talk about our recent research. There's all kinds of lines and squiggles and things like that on that. And anybody in here with a technical background is already getting juicy and excited about the fact that we got some beeps and squeaks to talk about. However, if I get up into this interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary group of financiers, human resources, you've got the cops, you've got the pilots, you've got the maintenance, you've got the civil engineers, all of these different disciplines. I cannot get up to my big, beautiful chart and say something like, we have observed where metal particles from the mantake infold, they're falling into the combustion chamber and they're causing electromagnetic effects that represent great statistical damage and probability of loss of the human operator. Does anybody know what I just said? I can tell who's technical by who's nodding their heads. But briefing like that caused me to lose funding. And as soon as somebody took some of my money, oh, you better believe I paid attention and learned how to tell the story. And what the story, all those squiggles and lines on the chart said, your engine is breaking down, you need to pull the aircraft, or else your pilot's gonna fall out of the air. Technical leaders must learn to tell their value, to sell their programs with stories, not statistics. One more, and this is my favorite that I'm going to share with you today. And that is, technical leaders tend to underestimate the value of building relationships. See, a lot of us who get into technical career fields, we get into technical career fields because technical career fields are black and white. They're lines and beeps and squeaks and frequencies and isotopes. Human feelings are squishy and they're hard to understand. And I tell you to go right, but you go left. And It's the whole reason I chose science, engineering, math in the first place. But there is a logic to human emotion. There is a science to human emotion. And it takes, again, stepping outside of that comfort zone and really being able to go and learn about a subject that makes us uncomfortable. Because if a technical leader does not build relationship and trust with their team, they aren't going to succeed. John Maxwell said, few leaders are successful unless a whole lot of other people want them to be. And so I want to give you just one example of this in play, because this one thing will help expand your reach and your effectiveness across every other leadership challenge that you have. One of my last jobs in the military was to lead a multi-generational team. So I was to take the knowledge from the old heads, some of which who had worked in the earliest days of the nuclear program, and translate and filter their knowledge down to the young bucks that had just graduated from college. So now we have in our workforce today, we have 5 different generations. We have the traditionalists, born before World War II. The traditionalists, they came through a tough time, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, and they don't understand why the rest of us young whippersnappers can't just do the same when things get tough. Then you have the baby boomers. Baby boomers, according to the statistics and the research and the stereotypes, are anti-war, anti-government, and anti-aging, which is why I can't call my friends grandma. I have to let go by their cute names, Bibi and Fifi. Because what's the motto of the baby boomers? Never trust anyone over 30. Then you have my generation, the cynical Gen X. We were the first latchkey kids. We were handed our house key, we were handed our TV dinner, and we were told, go figure it out. Oh, we figured out real quick that the loyalty our parents and grandparents had to their jobs got them nothing. And we figured out that for many people, the American dream was an American nightmare. So then, we, as a generation, don't trust anybody, especially the next generation, the millennials. Reared in the era of participation trophies and make everyone feel good, the millennials get a really bad rap in the workforce, even though some say it's driven to laziness. I'm not going to go there because I've seen some impressiveness, but even though they bring a lot of innovation and enjoyment to the work center. And finally, you have my son's generation. Gen Z. The first generation to never know life without internet. The generation that does not want to hear what the rest of us have to say because I'm 2 minutes into my long-winded story before they've already looked up the answer on Google. Transferring knowledge and building a team of trust with all those different generations is already a struggle enough for any leader, let alone somebody who chose a career field where they didn't really have to relate to people. So what I'm going to do for you today is I'm going to give you something that will help you relate to people. And so I'm going to give you some practical tips from a technical perspective. But first, I want to encourage you to download my generational differences chart. You don't have to give me any email. This isn't a list build. This is just a free gift because I don't have at my command the time to really come in and tell you everything that I would like to share. All right? You can download that gift at 254-5-ASK-JJC. So what can we do about these situations? How do we move forward from this technical awkwardness How do we move forward from this technical abrasiveness? How do we make sure that we as technical leaders can even get in the position and not get fired? It starts with getting outside of that comfort zone and taking a step to learn from someone else. And that's why I encourage our empowered technical leaders to really find mentors who can help lead the way. When I was faced with the failure of my first big bad job, I would never have been able to succeed if someone hadn't taken me under their wing. But too often in these technical positions, we haven't built the relationships. We haven't built the relationships because up until this point, they haven't been important. Now, I know we have all kinds of leaders in the room today, and some of you are thinking, well, of course you build relationships. You build strategic and intentional and still genuine relationships. But for a technical leader, I'm going to ask you to look at relationship building like a task on your to-do list. Put it into your phone. Understand what it takes to reach out to someone. It feels foreign. It feels uncomfortable because you don't want to come to work and talk about your grandma and how the kids are doing and whether or not they had to put the dog down. You just want to come to work and go to work. And what you don't realize is it is sending a message of disrespect and a lack of value to the coworkers you're dealing with. So I'm going to encourage you to make those types of relationship building activities a part of your daily list until it becomes second nature. The next thing I'm going to give our technical leaders today as a practical solution to help you move forward is to learn that we must get on the agenda of those who can mentor us and be advocates for us before we expect them to get on our agenda. And this requires stepping outside of our comfort zone because, again, many of us chose technical careers because we didn't want to deal with people. But to be successful as a leader, especially in the military, especially as you climb the corporate ranks, especially in academia. In fact, I could go through the list. I don't think there is a genre of leadership that doesn't need to build relationships with advocates and mentors. We must be able to get on their agenda, which means finding out what's important to them and honoring the things that are important to them, volunteering for the things that are important to them, and letting them know that they are important to us before we start asking them to open the doors. And we must do this. Again, I'm speaking to technical leaders who may not stop to think about these things. We must do this before we get in trouble. I can't wait till the computers go down to try to build a relationship with the comm commander. I can't wait till my people can't get into the site to build relationships with the site security chief. I have to build those relationships in advance, and I have to be strategic and genuine about building them. The last thing that I want to share with you today as an empowered technical leader is that getting outside of our comfort zone also means we have to be willing to look inside. And if technical leaders chose technical career fields because they didn't want to deal with other people, let me tell you, they don't want to deal with themselves. But the coach that took me to my first $100,000, Paul Martinelli, he said, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if I have an incompleteness in my life, it spills out to everything else. And technical leaders are very good about compartmentalizing. I'm going to stuff my feelings in a box and put them over here because I got to get the job done. And then I'm going to stuff my feelings in a box and I'll put them over there because I got to get the job done. And oh, this happened, well, I'm gonna stuff my feelings in a box and put them over there because you know what, feelings aren't logics, feelings aren't beeps and squeaks, I gotta get the job done. And we think we've handled it because we put everything in a box and we've put it on its shelf. So in our heart, in the shelf of our heart, we have all these boxes full of all these things we've never ever dealt with because it's not our personality to deal with it. It's not around us in the societies that we're working with to deal with it, especially in the military where it's like, well, I'm perfect and nothing ever goes wrong. We have these things dealt with and they're neatly in their little boxes, but they're still taking up space in our heart. And whether or not we know it, that is showing out and writing out on everything that we do. We can't hide how we're feeling inside. We can't hide how uncomfortable we are. We can't hide these things from our team. And what's worse is because most of our teams are other people who are technical, they're not understanding the personal, they're internalizing it as them. So now you have eroded trust within your team. I want to encourage my technical leaders today and everyone else. You don't have to be perfect to be a great leader. You have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. You have to be willing to take the first step and ask for help when it's needed. And you have to be willing to throw away everything you thought about leaders being born so that you can take on those leadership, those relationship, those attitude, and those communication skills that will allow you to excel. One of my mentors and friends, John Maxwell, said, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And I want to encourage you today, let your life begin by stepping out of your comfort zone today. I'm JJ Conway. Thank you.